Kwamu and Donovan Wilson, if anything else new came down the pike.
Well, starting from the lesser going upward, Israel Mukwamu left practice yesterday to be evaluated. He did return to the sidelines, which is a great sign. He was in street clothes, so essentially looks like he was shut down initially out of precaution. But in doing some digging yesterday, it appears that he actually pulled himself from practice as a precaution, as a hyper precaution to make sure that nothing was going on. It looks like he felt some kind of hamstring tightness, no tweak or anything, just a bit tight back there. So he went and talked to the medical staff, and basically they said, hey, well, let's just not push it. So looks like he's fine. He's day-to-day is what I would label it. Officially, they haven't labeled it just yet, but gut tells me he's day-to-day. As far as Donovan Wilson, it sounds as if worst-case scenario has been dodged, has been avoided, which is fantastic news. I know reports are out there that it's a calf strain. That kind of jives with what I'm seeing on this end. He was walking around with a boot yesterday. So thankfully, it's not a knee issue. There was no knee brace or knee wrap associated with his injury. He does have on the walking boot, but anyone who pays attention to football and the Cowboys knows that they'll throw a walking boot on any type of foot or ankle injury before they get tests done as a precaution. But I spoke with Dono yesterday. He's not in bad spirits at all. He was actually standing there making a plate for himself. So if it was too concerning, obviously that wouldn't have been the case. He would have already been in the hospital getting some MRIs and those other tests done. So those were scheduled for last night. We're waiting today to see what head coach Mike McCarthy has to say about Donovan Wilson. But the tone surrounding the injury is definitely not worst-case scenario. So sounds like we dodged a bullet on Donovan.
Is there any other maybe side nicks or bruises that might have happened yesterday that hasn't quite been reported, but somebody went down, went back in that is worthy of even talking about, or just normal training camp day hurts?
No one that left practice. Those are the only two that left practice on yesterday. Now, obviously, when Mike McCarthy speaks this morning, if there's another one that cropped up, be it, last minute on the field after media left or in the conditioning room, whatever the case may be, we'll get that update from McCarthy here at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. But between now and then, the only thing that we have is Donovan and Israel Mukwamu.
All right, so not a bad day one coming out from an injury standpoint then. If you had to, though, sum up day one with the word, going to play a bit of a game here, word game. If you had to sum up day one with the word for the offense and one word for the defense, Pat, what would it be?
Ooh, spicy. Spicy. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't, and I know you've touched on it already, and if not, then you're definitely going to touch on it. Obviously, this was one day after Trayvon Diggs gets his big, 5-year extension worth upwards of $100 million. But that didn't change Diggs' demeanor at all. He was still getting some chatter going back and forth between him and Dak Prescott. So that was spicy in and of itself. And then the matchup between Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks that I was tweeting about on yesterday, it wasn't just once or twice that they were matched up against each other. I think Mike McCarthy really wanted to have those two lock horns for the duration, because I don't recall a rep where there were both first teams were on and Gilmore and Cooks were not going against each other. And, of course, for those that may not know, and if you don't know, that means you haven't been reading the .com, so shame on you. But Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore have a long-standing relationship from the 2017 stint together with the New England Patriots. They remain friends throughout this entire time, and now they're teammates again. So keep that in mind. But on the field, hey, it was getting competitive. You had Gilmore with a very nice PBU. To start off, the team reps, Cooks went out, tried to do a quick hook in, I should say, and Gilmore was right there glued to his hip, and that was a pass breakup. But Cooks, not being one to let that slide, 2 or 3 plays later, he gets the ball in open space, and he puts Gilmore in the blender. So I talked to Gilmore after practice about that matchup, and like I wrote in the Gilmore article yesterday on the .com that everyone should be reading, right? He said it was fun. He was like lining up against guys like that can only make both guys better, and he's absolutely right. So between the offense and the defense, it's all picking up. I mean, you can tell these guys have been champing at the bit to get on this field, and it showed yesterday.
We have Patrick No-C Walker, DallasCowboys.com here, Scientific Method. I'm a bit surprised that you said spicy on day one. Day one, you would think they would just ramp it up, kind of ease it in, but with so much talent on both sides of the ball, these boys are ready to come out the gates fire.
Absolutely, and the thing is the coaches, to a great degree, they are trying to ramp things up because obviously the first padded practice isn't until Monday, August 1st. So they're trying to ramp things up, but at the same time, they're kind of letting these guys play within reason. They're kind of letting these guys compete. So when you see Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore kind of going at it competitively on the field, and then when you see the chatter between Trevon Diggs and Dak Prescott, which is nothing that either of them are new to. They kind of go back and forth often in each practice. You can already just tell these guys have been waiting for this opportunity to get on the field. So the coaching staff has done a great job, effective yesterday. They've done a great job of kind of measuring it out and making sure these guys are not going too hard too soon, but also with letting the competitive juices flow as well. So great day one. The injuries notwithstanding, but again, sounds like we dodged a major bullet on the injury front.
So day one, individually, you brought up some names here. You're talking about Brandon Cooks, talking about Stephon Gilmore. I already know which name I think you're about to bring up next, but who individually stood out to you? It could be offense, defense, special teams, doesn't matter. Give me your guys that caught your eye and they're on the top of your mind right now from yesterday.
Eric Scott Jr., let me talk to him. Still on this very program on more than one occasion, you have asked me post-draft, you said who was one of my sleepers, and I said Eric Scott Jr., right? I said he could be the steal of the draft. We got the Deuce Vaughn variable, obviously, but Eric Scott Jr., I talked to Dan Quinn after the draft, talked to Mike McCarthy after the draft, talked to, these coaches after the draft, and Will McClay specifically, Stephen Jones, everybody is singing this kid's praises. So I went back, I doubled back and looked harder at his film, and I started to see some of the flashes that intrigued them. Well, yesterday, flash, there it was again, right? So it was an in route, slant route from Simi Fehoko, and Fehoko created a tip drill. The pass was right there on the money by Dak Prescott. And, of course, this is a concern as far as Cowboys fans are concerned, and rightfully so. Tip drill interceptions have to be eliminated by the Cowboys if they want this offense to go. So, but I would rather it happen on day one of training camp and not in January against the 49ers or the Eagles or something like that. So go ahead and get them out the way. If you're going to have them, get them out the way now. So Simi Fehoko knows he has to catch that pass. But kudos to Eric Scott for being Johnny on the spot. He was right there for the tip drill. He brought it in to get the first interception of training camp. And even prior and after that, both before and after that, just his swagger, his demeanor. This kid has some dog in him. And off the field, he's eerily quiet. But on the field, he's a different person entirely, a different breed. I love his build. I love his character. Great day one for Eric Scott. If he continues to build on that, oh, man, dare I say they might have another DaRon Bland there.
Hey, Pat, I literally, the tip of my tongue was about to say, could this happen in back-to-back years where you get a guy in the 5th round and he ends up possibly, and it's early and we're excited, but this happened with DaRon. I was telling the fans this, DaRon Bland was a guy I was like, hey, man, look, 5th round pick, let's see what happens, but he's got a lot in front of him. And then by the middle of camp, I'm like, hey, DaRon Bland's looking like, the third best corner. Yeah. Now, it's going to be a bit different for Eric Scott to look like the third best corner, but if he can look like the 4th best corner, that's almost equivalent to what DaRon did last year in camp.
Right, and let's qualify and quantify it appropriately. That was day one,
right.
And this is going to be a long camp and preseason, and I'm really anxious to see what he does in these 3 preseason games Eric Scott we're talking about. But I really think he has a fantastic shot at not only making the roster, which also means he's going to have to carve out a role on special teams as well, something that Mike McCarthy spoke on just in general as far as some of the newer guys coming in. So if he can carve out a role on special teams, that's going to add to his value. But if he keeps making plays like he did on yesterday, it's hard to not want to throw him into that DaRon Bland conversation, because for those that are saying, oh, well, it's kind of early, that's fair, but also keep in mind at this time last year when I was reporting that DaRon Bland was taking over camp and everybody was like, oh, it's too early. Well, how'd that work out? So I say all of that to say, let it play out, but keep an open mind that this kid does, in fact, have the skill set that he could be on that same trajectory as DaRon Bland. And another guy that you want to keep an eye on is Jalen Moreno. So the touchdown he reeled in yesterday, very athletic. The route was crisp on that. Kudos to Cooper Rush for putting that on the money. That was a dot to the back end of the end zone. And kudos to the undrafted rookie for making that play with a defensive back draped all over him. So that's a name to watch as well. Those two guys from an offensive standpoint and a defensive standpoint kind of stole the day, more specifically than anyone else from the rookie standpoint.
You had a tweet yesterday, Pat, about my cousin, Terrence Steele, man.
Yeah.
Terrence, he kind of surprised a lot of people being available right now. And this was your tweet. It says, because this was somebody I hit you up about telling Sam Williams to go talk to D. Ware about some pass rush moves. And you said Sam Williams' execution of the move was flawless. The problem so was Terrence Steele's. The takeaway here is Steele is back like he never left in the first place. So I guess you can say Steele got it.
Ooh, that's bars. That's bars. Now, unfortunately, this is practice. This is live. This is how it goes. I had the shot right before that snap. I had the shot. And right as they snapped the ball, one of the rookies, because, of course, we're on the sidelines, one of the rookies stepped in front of the frame and blocked the entire shot. And I know he did it by accident, but I was like, you're killing me, but do your job. Thanks for doing your job. But long story short, in that particular rep, Terrence Steele, he was at RT1. I'm going to say that again. He was at RT1, ladies and gentlemen. He wasn't at left guard. He wasn't at right guard. He was at RT1 as Terrence walks past me right now. So the rep goes, Sam Williams gets walled off by Terrence Steele immediately. Sam goes to his second move, feigns outside, spins inside. Now, at the moment that he made that spin, I looked at Terrence and said to myself, knee injury he's recovering from, Sam's going to win this rep. I was wrong, because as quickly as I had that thought, Terrence Steele kept his feet shuffled to the left, kept his hands engaged with Sam Williams, and that was basically the end of that rep because the ball was already going out of Dak Prescott's hands. It was just one example of 2 or 3 great reps I saw from Terrence Steele yesterday as the team ramps him back up. Talked to Terrence before practice, I want to say on Tuesday evening, after he was medically cleared, and I was like, hey, you were right. He was like, I told you I was ahead of schedule, and here's what really should please Cowboys fans. And this is a quote from Terrence Steele. He said, it feels like I never tore anything in the first place, end quote. That is fantastic news.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, look, when you hear that he's ready to go and you see those videos and things like that, you get excited, but you have to wait till you get on the field. And the fact that he's pushing and pulling against these guys and he's feeling great like that has me fired up. Now, all this is great, but in day one, you got players that do well, you got players that don't. Who needs to have a bounce back day in day 2?
Well, we talked about it. It's going to have to be Semi Fehoko.
Yeah.
Fehoko he had a great training camp. Well, actually better than great last year, 2022. He was one of the stars of training camp. Injuries kind of derailed his season, but he knows coming into this training camp he has to deliver another strong one and then build on that in the preseason and then stay healthy so that he can build on it in the regular season, assuming he makes the roster, and he has a great shot at doing so. But yesterday, rough start. OTAs, I logged him with no drops. Mini camp, I logged him with no drops. So I guess he was due, and that drop came on the tip drill, created the tip drill that ended up being Eric Scott Jr.'s interception. So Fehoko acquitted himself better over the remainder of the day, made the catches that were thrown to him after that. But today I look for him to kind of have that chip on his shoulder and say, hey, you know what? Let me remind these guys that yesterday that was an accident. That doesn't happen frequently with me. So, yes, I'm expecting Semi Fehoko to have a bounce-back day.
I feel like he usually starts off slow. We heard this last year when I talked to Kyle, and then he kind of turned it up a bit. So he's going to have to, because Moreno Cropper, it's to me, he's the number 1 undrafted free agent wide receiver that has a chance to crack the roster if those guys slip any little bit, is Jalen Moreno Cropper. All right, I know you got to get going here in a second, bro, but what are you personally looking for on day 2?
On day 2, I'm looking to see what Deuce Vaughn and Hunter Lipke look like. I couldn't necessarily focus on them yesterday, all over the place, trying to get some of the bigger names like Stephon versus Cooks. Wanted to see, Dak and CD back in action. Wanted to see what Michael Gallup's springiness looks like. But now I'm going to start kind of focusing on some of these newer guys. We talked about Eric Scott. He made you focus on him yesterday. Moreno Cropper made me focus on him yesterday. Let's see who can draw that attention today. But even if not, I'm going to kind of key in on Hunter Lipke and Deuce Vaughn, because the Cowboys are trying to sort out their running back room, and those two guys are going to play a large part in that getting sorted out.
All right, man. That is Patrick No C Walker, DallasCowboys.com, dropping the pure science.
Yes, science.
Appreciate you, big bro.
Absolutely, bro. Hit you in a minute.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead and turn this page. Appreciate Pat for joining us. Look, I understand you guys have some questions for him, but during training camp, these are going to have to be more concise. He has other obligations as well, so we have to keep it to a solid 15 minutes. And then he has to move forward. I believe he has some more radio hits he has to do. Then he has some .com stuff. Training camp is going to be tight. It's going to be really tight for him. So we're going to try to get in as much as we can. But there was a whole lot of science right there from our guy, Pat No C Walker. Thanks for watching, and make sure to follow and subscribe to A to Z Dallas so you don't miss an episode of The Scientific Method. Every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Facebook and YouTube, with every episode available